You want it to be as smooth as possible, nice and smooth. The smoother you get your sealer, the smoother your base coat's going to be, the smoother your clear coat's going to be. So we're going to let that flash off for about 10 to 15 minutes. We want it to start to cure. We want those chemicals to start to evaporate, and then we're going to apply our base with the same gun. Okay, we're looking at this to see if it's ready for base. You can see it's still a little wet there. Still a little wet here, so we're not quite ready for base. We want that to cure up just a little bit more. So we'll let this dry up just a little bit more before we start applying our base. This is dry now. It's ready to be sprayed, but we want to inspect it for any dust particles. I like to do it after I spray the sealer, after it's dried up a little bit, and then I like to do it after I spray the base. So that's one thing about sealer. It's another opportunity for dust to get in your sealer and get in your paint job. So we looked it over. There's a couple little dust particles right here. I took some 600 grit sandpaper and we just sanded those out lightly. We wiped it down with the tack cloth to remove any of that dust. And then there's another spot over here that we did as well. You can see where there's some scratches. There's a little particle of dust there and there. Now, after I spray the base on it, we'll inspect it again. This is going to help you get a clean paint job. Especially if you're doing this at home, you're not in a paint booth, this is an important step. So let's go ahead and spray our base now.
Let's go over some different tips and techniques when you're spraying base coat. Now, as far as the gun settings, I'm going to give you a guide for your gun settings for base coat. You don't need as much air pressure when you're applying base. Somewhere between 15 and 25 psi is sufficient, depending on how you like to spray. Your fan should be set as wide as you can get it without any distortion in your pattern. You could do a spray out, and if you have a nice uniform fan, you're good to go. On your fluid volume, I recommend starting 3 turns out from closed, so you close it all the way and you turn it 3 full turns out. You can make adjustments from there because these gun settings are just a guide. When you're spraying a high metallic finish, your technique is important. You want to overlap your passes around 70%. So when you make a pass, you want to overlap that previous pass about 70%. You want a consistent speed and a consistent distance from the panel when you're spraying.
This is pretty much ready for the second coat. It looks nice and uniform. Color looks good. Everything looks pretty much covered. There's a few little light areas that we're going to spray. We're going to put one more coat on this. When you're spraying metallics like this, when you put your first coat on, they tend to look a little bit blotchy, but as they cure and dry, they clean up and the metallics look more uniform.